The Great Resignation has plagued US employers over the last 8 months. Is it now making its way to Southeast Asia? And how are firms here adjusting their comp and ben packages to keep staff happier for longer? Shining a spotlight on all things HR, this is the HR Agenda. I'm Paul Howell. Joining me here again this week is Laurence Smith. Laurence, it's great to have you back with us for another episode.
Thanks, Paul. I'm looking forward to being back here again, the Chief of Staff Asia.
Let me start by wishing you a happy Lunar New Year. What's been high on your agenda as we kickstart the Year of the Tiger?
Indeed, Happy New Year. Actually, there's a really interesting conversation I had literally 2 days ago with a senior HR person, one of the big global insurance companies. And they were talking about their community investment projects and how they're working with especially women across the country in terms of financial literacy and wellness, but being frustrated that these were really, one-off workshops and they weren't able to follow through. And the conversation we're having was how you can use technology, in this case, Picture Wealth, and where they've really taken apps and gamified financial learning and proven that you can have a real impact on financial literacy. And what surprised me was when, again, this big global insurance company turned around and said, "That sounds amazing. We'd like to collaborate on that. And by the way, can we use it for our own employees as well?" And the surprise for me was that even though this is a big global insurance company, they themselves with their own employees felt the same pressures around financial literacy and wellness, and were keen to explore how that could be driven. So that was a bit of a surprise for me. So a bit of a new adventure for the Year of the Tiger.
Well, our first topic this week has been causing quite a stir in US labour markets over the last year or so. I'm talking about the so-called Great Resignation. There have been some staggering statistics involved, with a record high of 4.4 million workers, around 3% of the workforce there, all quitting their jobs in just 1 month, September last year. Over the full year, it was more than 34 million voluntarily leaving their jobs, with many opting to stay out of the full-time labour force as we have known it up to now. Now, here in Southeast Asia, we don't have those record numbers of employees quitting, but we are seeing similar changes in the priorities for employees. Workplace flexibility, higher wages, and jobs with greater purpose or relevance to societal issues are now high in demand. And it's not yet clear that employers are able to match those requirements. So, Laurence, do you see this trend following through here? Are we set for our own Great Resignation here in Southeast Asia?
In a way, I think so, yes, although I would debate the term Great Resignation. And again, in the US, I think Josh Bersin called it the Great Migration. In Asia, I might describe it as the Great Realignment, or maybe the Great Realization. And I think it's driven by a couple of things. And for a lot of people, it's just the realization that lifetime employment at a large conglomerate or a large company, there's no safety there anymore. And I think there's a lot more movement and labour mobility because of that, as well as a lot of people looking at, what are the alternatives for us? And the realignment comes around realizing that despite societal and sometimes parental expectations, having a big job at a big company is not always what it's cracked up to be. And the last couple of years has shown us that, that's not always a safe place to be. So I do think we'll see big changes across ASEAN. It will vary by country and culture. And I do think there's going to be a big realignment of expectations between employers and employees.
Do you think employee loyalty, however you measure it, in this region has been decreasing over the past few years?
I think it's decreasing, and it's decreasing in terms of assumed loyalty to brands, to big names, to big companies. And I think what we're seeing instead is a shift to loyalty to cause, loyalty to purpose, loyalty to culture that aligns with people's individual values. And I think, and again, there's a lot of interesting data that supports this, which is people are either changing jobs because of money, but when they change jobs, what they're looking for is a bigger alignment to values, to purpose, and to what drives them as individuals. So I think we're seeing quite a change a different definition of loyalty. Before, it's been assumed, it's been big brands, it's been big names. I think in future, it's more about big purpose and big meaning.
And finally, Laurence, what do you think should be the priority for HR leaders and employers to avoid their own personal great resignation at their specific workplaces?
There's very compelling data from a number of different sources that says the biggest attractor, the most powerful retainer is all around culture. It's purpose, it's alignment, it's the stuff people want to believe in and have meaning in their life. Yes, they expect good hybrid work situations. Yes, they expect good compensation and benefits. And again, there's much more of a focus around health and well-being, around financial well-being, around those areas as well. But if HR really wants to make a difference and retain the best talent and attract the best talent, it is around the employee value proposition in terms of culture, leadership behaviors, that seeking a meaning of purpose and being absolutely consistent about that. Gone are the times when we could just say the right things without doing them. People are now looking for that authenticity as well as the perks that go with it.
Now, one big blunt lever that HR has when it comes to staff retention is the compensation and benefits package. So our second topic today is looking at the way these are changing and some of the pressures that HR leaders are facing from staff with itchy feet on the one side, but also tightening budgets on the employer side. Things like non-cash benefits, increased health insurances, and workplace flexibility are gaining popularity amongst employees today and therefore finding their way into those comp and ben packages. Laurence, have you noticed some of these changes coming through as well? And do you think they represent a permanent change in the way staff are employed and remunerated?
I think they certainly represent a big change and probably a long-term change. I'm not sure it's permanent because there will be more business cycles in the future. But certainly it's very clear that people are, it's kind of a dichotomy, because what the data says is the biggest reason people change jobs is for money. They are looking for massive pay rises, and often they're getting very significant pay rises. On the other hand, the data also says what people are looking for in the places they go to is the values, the purpose, and the alignment, as well as the flexible benefits, so that they can choose a lot more. So I think what we're seeing is the consequences of our own behavior as large corporates and as leaders over the last couple of decades of really treating people as human resources, as cogs in the machine that are somewhat disposable. And I think people have come to realization that if I have the right skills, if I'm keeping myself up to date, if I'm at the edge of my field, I can make a lot more money somewhere else and get the purpose, the meaning, the comp and ben, the perks and flexible packages that I'm looking for. So I think it gives a real dichotomy for HR and leaders, in that you have to be very much on the ball in terms of the comp and ben aspects, but you also have to be making sure that the organization is true to its values, that the leaders are living their purpose. And I think more than anything, you cannot have one-dimensional answers here. I think, people are looking for more holistic situations where they get the pay, the comp and ben with the purpose and the meaning. And I actually think that's an amazingly good thing for business and for society and for stakeholders as a whole. But I do think it gives a real challenge for HR leaders in the short and medium term to really be on top of this and bring it to life in organizations.
Thanks, Laurence. Now, many employers concentrate on non-cash benefits, including more flexible healthcare arrangements and even workplace meals or discounts on popular local brands. Do these still have the same retention value that they once did in 2022?
I don't think so. A lot of them are now regarded as somewhat gimmicky, or their table stakes is nice to have it, but it doesn't really make a big difference. Again, the most interesting data shows that the most sought after perks are the flexible and hybrid working situations, so that be productive from anywhere, anytime. Secondly, mental health support and financial wellness support. So really looking the whole human being and considering their family as well. Somewhere between 60 to 80% of employees where their company offer mental health benefits are taking advantage of them. And often the biggest driver behind that is, again, financial wellness issues and concerns. So those benefits. So I think really, organizations have to be quite holistic in how they're putting that together. The gimmicky perks of, just copying, Google's free food or whatever. I think we're way past that stage now. We're way past that. Employees are looking for something that is much more personalized and aligned to their family and personal situation and stage of career growth. In fact, the third point there to add is the critical reskilling opportunities. And again, you mentioned earlier the Great Resignation. I've seen a lot of data recently that suggests, one of the most powerful levers organizations have is the ability to reskill internally, as well as talent mobility. So to offer people those developmental opportunities and those mobility chances within the organization to retain them and to develop them. So I think those are the three aspects that are most important moving forwards.
We've heard of some US tech companies offering payments in alternative currencies, including cryptos and non-fungible tokens. Are these serious alternatives for these employers, or are they more of an employer branding gimmick?
I don't know, to be honest. I think this is really interesting. And I think the answer is probably both. I mean, most crazy ideas are crazy until they become mainstream. Will this stuff become mainstream? I don't know. If you're in the tech industry, does it make sense to be enticing, rewarding, incentivizing your employees with crypto and with NFTs? Possibly. From a mindset and attraction and retention perspective, I think it's really interesting. And again, we've been doing work on digital mindsets in different organizations, and encouraging people to buy some crypto if they've never done it, to go and collect an NFT or even mint an NFT just for the experience of it. So I do think there's a real opportunity here to engage people through things that they care about or things that you can get them interested in. And especially if you're in tech or, in any way digital in your business, which is kind of everybody these days, whether this is a real perk and a benefit, or it's a way to get your employees more interested and aligned in digital mindsets and excited about the digital world, I do think there's a potential upside here. So it's really interesting, and it's not yet a trend, so we'll have to wait and see. But I would certainly encourage exploring it, if only to find out if it works or not.
And finally, Laurence, do you have any advice for employers under pressure to pay more and more and more for that hard to find talent that's increasingly looking like it's hard to keep talent as well? Are we all just doomed to bid higher and higher for the skills needed in our economy today?
I think that is a bit of a reality, to be honest. I mean, I literally caught up with a colleague 48 hours ago, and they're sharing the story of, a mid-level HR person they'd hired and doubled their salary when they brought them into, a fast-growing tech firm. But 6 months later, they were offered 3 times as much externally. And the HR leader in question just said, go, that's fantastic, that's amazing. We can't compete with that. So you're not going to be able to perpetually compete on the money, right? We've talked about the other things you need to offer, and you need to do that. But I think you also need to just be a lot more dynamic and a lot more flexible about where the talent is and how you access it. And I think we talked in a previous episode about thinking of talent as the entire ecosystem in which your organization operates, your customers, your partners, your vendors and supply chain, but also all of the freelance and gig economy talent out there that you can engage. And to really think of your employer brand, not just the employee value proposition for your full-time employees in your big office and your virtual workspaces, but any gig economy expertise you can bring in as well. So HR people are going to have to be a lot more inclusive and a lot more open-minded in where we get the talent and how we develop it and attract it and retain it. To me, that's still the biggest takeaway.
Well, thanks very much once again, Laurence. Up next, we're talking HR tech with Chief of Staff Asia's Technology Editor, Vandana Nanwani. Hi, Vandana. It's great to have you back. What will you be sharing about in today's HR Tech Update?
Hi, Paul. For today's episode, I'll be discussing the use of artificial intelligence, or AI, within the HR function. Now, in HR, the use of AI is most commonly used in the recruiting process, and also in talent management. While AI is not new and most people will recognize it for the many chatbots and other communication tools, it has proved to be particularly beneficial for some HR practices.
Well, that's interesting. So what are some examples of AI being used for recruitment and talent management processes? I mean, these still require very human skills, building relationships and supporting and managing employees. How does AI apply to that?
Good question, Paul. So for the recruitment process, AI can help with candidates' resumes. So rather than having applicants re-enter the same information over multiple steps of the hiring process, AI can help candidates transfer that information from their resumes onto smart digital forms. Now, this can prove to be a more engaging experience for candidates and helps HR to get quick and easy access to the key information they need to make their recruitment decisions. AI can also help understand employee referrals by looking into the kinds of candidates employees are referring to and gaining insight on whose referrals prove the most successful. When it comes to talent management, AI gives HR professionals data-backed resources and insights gathered directly from employees. This then allows HR professionals to take action and deliver the employee experiences that the workforce wants, which as a result boosts engagement and lowers turnover.
Well, it sounds like it will make the job of employers and HR and supervisors much easier. But Vandana, are there any drawbacks to AI when it is used as part of an HR technology solution?
Well, there can be. For starters, AI is naturally expensive. There is a lot of programming and testing that goes into every solution that's built, whether it is an off-the-shelf product or a custom-built piece of software. So not all businesses can afford the high cost of implementing AI. And that's even before the cost of maintenance and regularly upgrading the systems. Secondly, it is important to remember that AI is almost never the solution in itself. HR leaders also need to consider the employee experience and design factors to ensure the system is not just usable, but enjoyable to use for those with little or even no experience with technology.
Thanks very much, Vandana. We'll see you on the next episode with another HR tech update.
Thanks, Paul.
Well, that's just about all we have time for on the HR agenda today. Thanks very much to you, Laurence, for being a part of this episode.
Thanks, Paul. It's been some fantastic, some challenging questions and some really interesting topics to talk about and explore.
And thanks to all the HR professionals out there watching us this week in Southeast Asia. Here at Chief of Staff Asia, we're always on the lookout for the best of HR people and practices across the region, which is why we've launched the inaugural HR Stars Awards this month. There are 15 categories, a two-tiered judging process, and free entry for all HR teams across Singapore and the region. So head to the link below to check out more about what is a vital new opportunity to recognise and celebrate the best of our HR community here in the region. I'm Paul Howell, and thanks very much for watching the HR Agenda.